This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. Everybody, it's my delight and honor to have back Dr. Bill Davis. He'll be talking to us about honoring our dependent parents. It's a book he has coming out in June of this year, 2026. And I was able to read an advanced copy online, so I can't hold it up for you, but it would be meaningful to somebody that you know if you're not in the situation of having parents that have lots of needs and are looking to you as their child. These are thorny issues. His teaching position in philosophy at Covenant College continues, as well as his consulting and committee work as an ethicist with hospitals and with end-of-life issues. So thanks for coming back on.
You bet.
We were talking last time about the principle you identify in your book of not just honoring our parents, but actually carrying out their wishes as they would have liked. As we imagine them in their best self making these decisions, so that we're standing in for them, not necessarily as they are in their frailty, when their minds may not be clear, when their judgment may be a little bit different than what we really think is representative of them. Have I said it accurately?
Yes.
And so today, because we were on a pretty lofty level in our last conversation, I'd like to bring it down to some specific scenarios, which is where you also shine in helping people make these tough decisions, and talk to us about a scenario where a family might be debating a living situation for their older parents.
A husband and wife with 2 children live in a townhome. This is the story's in the book, and the mother of the husband. Look, the husband's name is David. The mother of the husband, and her name is June. She has treated her daughter-in-law horribly for the entire time that David and his wife have been married. And now she needs to find a new place to live. She's not well enough to live independently, and she thinks that her son owes her, as a matter of honoring her, a place to live. So now, but they live in a townhome that's on 3 levels. The bathroom's on the 2nd floor, the bedroom's on the 3rd floor, and she's infirm. And she thinks that the fifth commandment to honor her means that they need to sell the townhome, move into a 1-story place so that she has a place to live. Well, there's all kinds of questions. The first one is the son obligated to take his mother in, even though his mother mistreated his wife?
And is likely to in the future.
And is likely to in the future, right? There's no evidence that she's gotten nicer to anybody. So you might think that the daughter-in-law's obligation to honor her mother-in-law is not as strong as the son's obligation. And I don't think the Bible teaches that. I think the Bible teaches that husbands and wives are one flesh, and that the obligation to honor your in-laws is the same as your obligation to honor the parents from your family of origin. They might be your biological parents, but they could be your adoptive parents. They're your parents. And when you marry into that. However, and here, something we didn't talk about in our last conversation, we have to draw a distinction between what it means to honor our parents when we're using their things, their time and money and health and reputation, and when we're using our things, So in this case, the question is not just what will David, the son, do for June, the mother, with the mother's resources. She's asking him to use his resources to care for her. And while I think he does have a Fifth Commandment opportunity to honor his mother by making sure she's not destitute, that she's living in a place that's safe, living in his house is using his resources. And mistreating his wife is an obligation. He has to protect his wife also from being mistreated. So in this case, he needs to, what it means to honor his mother has made a pretty clear demand. So it's not a question of what she wants, but the question is, what does he do with that demand with all the other obligations that he has? And I think he fulfills his obligation to honor his mother's demand by showing that he clearly understands it and has taken it as seriously as he can. He's going to say, here, I know what you need, Mom. You need a safe place to live. I also know that you're going to wreck the life of the rest of my family. So I can't do that. Here's what I'm going to do. We're not going to move. We're going to continue to live in a place that's where you couldn't live because of the stairs. You can't live there. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to connect you to social services. There is public assistance for housing in an assisted living facility, almost independent, but with the kind of care that you need. It's available. You can afford it if you liquidate your assets. So I'm going to spend the time to help you understand the situation. I'm going to help you identify how to use the resources that you have right now to secure legal counsel and financial counsel that you will need in order to make the move. I will help you downsize. So I'm going to spend a lot of time connecting you with help, helping you downsize, and helping you move into a place where you won't be hurting my family.
Yeah,
That's
right.
so what he can't do. I don't think that his mother's mistreatment of his wife is a reason for him simply to wash his hands and say, look, you've made your bed, you've earned to be ignored. I don't think he can do that. I think he needs to be taking steps to make sure that his mother's safe. But it doesn't have to be living in his house.
Right. So yeah, there are some boundaries because you're also an adult, and it might be children that you don't think you can mix in with the older generation for various reasons. It might be the financial sacrifice.
Right.
Let me ask you another one that happened to someone that I know. I'll change a little bit, and I'm sure you changed the names in the scenario you just
Yes.
portrayed. But so a friend of mine, her father was very, very wealthy, and they were on good terms, reasonably good terms. But he began to gamble. In your book, you talk about a dilemma about the father asking to go buy a $20 lottery ticket, but this was like thousands a day
Oh.
that he was gambling. And or a similar scenario would be a friend had his father, also very wealthy, had began to date a woman, and she moved in.
Yep.
And he needed a fair amount of care. She was able to give it, but it also became a romantic relationship. And she began to say that the son couldn't come in the home.
Yeah.
And the son began to very methodically cut off contact and was appearing to meet with lawyers and have a lawyer come to the house and presumably to change his will and all this estate planning he had carefully made when he was in a more realistic frame of mind. What does someone do in those situations where they see impending doom?
Right.
They see the looting of assets, and people manipulating perhaps the
Hmm.
older parent, but and that the older parent very vehemently saying, "This is what I want."
Right. Um, so you're describing a very difficult situation for what it's worth.
Yeah.
And often that turns out to be the single most important thing I say to someone who's asking for my advice. So it's like, objectively, this is terrible. Even if you've heard of other people in similar situations, it's still terrible. And there isn't a simple fix. So let's do the I think the dating, both of them are bad.
Mhm.
With the gambling, with a bookie, with somebody who's encouraging gambling, I think you can you can call Adult Protective Services and say, and Adult Protective Services might get involved. Say you're being preyed upon by someone who's trying to take your money through gambling, and your parents are not likely to listen to you, especially when they think they know what they're doing. And what are you like? I changed your diapers. What are you doing? Telling me what to do.
Mhm.
So it would be good if the relationship were healthy enough that your parents would hear you and say, like, really, Dad, this is that circumstance where I'm pointing something out that you don't want to hear. But you need to have had conversations, a lot of conversations, where
Yeah.
that's likely to work. So if your dad's not going to listen to you, and apart from pretty careful attention to listening to each other before this, they're not going to
Mhm.
listen to you. You need to get other voices involved.
Yeah.
And so the single most important thing to do is, if you can take steps to get them away from the predator. So part of the difficulty in the romance case is so in this case, it's a woman who's providing companionship and medical attention. So there's some medical support.
Mhm.
That's a pretty significant give on
Mhm.
that woman's part. It's hard to say this is nothing but predation. They're not just there to loot them. Now
Mhm.
they might also be siphoning off their assets, but
Mhm.
it's probably considerably more complicated than this is nothing but an attempt to take their money.
Yeah.
It's probably quite complicated. There's some romantic part to it. Your dad is not thinking clearly, but boy, this is exciting. And so you need other voices involved. If you can get them away, I had a case similar to this. And there was a way, without saying, this woman is taking your money, Dad, there was a way of saying, wouldn't you enjoy moving back to be close to your friends? And she didn't want to move. So they got him out of there. That's one way. So you have
Mhm.
to make something more attractive than this. But if you can't do that, you want to get other voices involved. You need to find their
Mhm.
friends who are still alive and would like to go visit them and find out what they're doing. And maybe you'd give them a ride to go visit them
Uh-huh.
and see how they're living and who they're living with, because it's going to take a peer, somebody that they've trusted for some other reason, coming into the conversation and saying, "Oh, like this is new, and where's all the money going?" So
Mhm.
a friend is the best, but
Yeah.
a pastor is a possibility. An accountant, someone who's been looking at your books for years,
Mhm.
and you can say, uh, "I'd like to come and review your finances, Dad. I don't need to be there, but your accountant would like to spend some time talking to you about how things are going." You get the, and you might have to pay the accountant to go and visit, but you've got to get another voice involved.
We want to take a moment to thank the Herzog Foundation and its growing media network, home to the Conversation Balloons podcast and other incredible faith-focused shows. The foundation is dedicated to strengthening Christian education, helping families, teachers, and entire school communities pass on faith and wisdom from one generation to the next. They do this through free training events, support for new and growing schools, and a media network. Learn more about how the Herzog Foundation is investing in the next generation at herzogfoundation.com.
I would talk on the show more about guardianship, procedures and um, legal remedies like that. But each state has different laws on that, and I don't want to get down to particularities that don't apply to people or seem to be giving legal advice
Right.
outside of my jurisdiction.
So can I ask you a general question? You can help me. A general question about legal things like that. In my experience, the courts, if in this case the dad were before a judge and made it clear that this is what I want, I don't know what kind of evidence it would take for the judge to assign guardianship to someone else if the dad's living independently with a caregiver.
Right. That would be a hard case legally. And one of the dangers of going into that and getting other voices, other arbiters involved is they may not go your way. And
right.
I know of one case where even though a man wasn't really functioning up to par and had exhibited some bad judgment in court, in the guardianship hearing, which was brought by a relative who was a lawyer.
Oh my goodness.
He looked so good on the stand that the judge, made his own evaluation of how clearly this man was thinking and said, don't interfere. He gets to do what he wants. And they were sorry they litigated it.
Right. And you would be, because then it's in stone.
That's right.
So, I'm for informal approaches, bringing in, especially common friends. So, or siblings, your uncle, get your uncle to go visit your dad. And if they're available, if they had a good relationship, because sometimes they just don't know. They're not in the loop on a rising gambling problem or a new romance that is threatening finances. They just don't know. So getting other family involved at their generational level, not the children ganging up on the parents, because parents are likely to resent that, but from their generation, not where the children don't call in the aunts and uncles and say, you need to go fix my dad. You say, it'd really be great if you visited and just get to know what's happening, and then we could talk about it maybe. So
speaking of other family being involved, how often do you see that one child in the picture is very much oriented to this biblical idea of honoring the parents, or just has a warmer relationship, or is a more responsible person or responsive person, and other siblings not getting on board with the honoring? Does that show up a lot?
Yes, quite a bit. All it takes is more than one child for there to be, for their regard and their willingness to invest to be unequal. And the opportunity for resentment is pretty high. And the only thing I'm sure about in these cases is, and this is especially the case when the parents are cognitively altered, they have some kind of dementia. Even when the dementia is not severe and they're just having trouble keeping up, they can feel that the children are at odds with each other, but they can't understand it. They just know that something's not right. So even when they're only dealing with one child, they can feel the edge of frustration with the other siblings. They can feel it, but they can't process it. They can't think all the way through it. They just are distressed. And so I'm real sure that the parents would not want the children fighting. That I'm real sure about.
Yes.
And so, but it's not a simple matter of one of the children putting their foot down and saying, our parents would not want us fighting, therefore do what I say. No, that's not going to work. Because they all could do that. They all could take the position that they're the ones that understand what the fifth commandment requires. They know that everybody claims they're honoring their parents. You're overdoing it. You're treating them like infants or something. Everybody's got a version. My recommendation, the recommendation that I start with in those cases, is that when the siblings are not agreeing, that each of them should say, my job is to do for my dependent parent what needs to be done, and not say that anybody owes them help. You just have to, like, given my resources and this need that my parent has, this is what I can do. Not, this is what we can do if we just divide it by 3, or in my case, it'd be 5. I have 4 siblings. I think each one should say, what can I be doing? And then if anybody else wants to help, yay. But then they can rejoice that anybody's helping rather than grumbling that people aren't helping enough. I think an awful lot of the angst that goes with it is the sense of being exploited, the sense of being ill-used by your siblings. And if you just set that aside, say, okay, never mind. I'm going to make no demands, and I'm not going to waste any emotional energy on feeling like they're taking advantage of me. I'm going to do what I can to make sure that my parent is safe. And that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And again, it's probably going to mean more time than money. And if you could just set aside that I ought to be getting more help, which is very hard to do, but that's what you pray for. You pray that you will be able to set aside your feeling of resentment and just focus on what you can do. And then rejoice if they join in. They might take advantage of you, but then you're hurt. If you let it anger you, you're hurt twice.
That's important. I sometimes, when I was trying to help my elderly parents and grandparents and in-laws, I would think God loves a cheerful giver, and if I can't give it cheerfully, let's look at that. Am I just being extra? Am I doing it with resentment toward my siblings, which never was warranted, or resentment toward the parent? Then that is not the kind of offering of honor that God is hoping that we will give to them, and they will pick up on it, I think, a lot of the time.
Right.
John Gottman, the famous marriage communication expert, says one of the most corrosive things and predictors of divorce is contempt. The spouses having and showing contempt for each other. Of course, that's a horrible thing, but I think it can come out in the parent-child relationship also. Certainly when the parent was raising the child, but a parent shows contempt for the child, that's just abusive. It's horrible. And the same goes the other direction, though. And there are times when the parent can be so frustrating and unattractive and demanding that it can, one can be tempted to that. But you talk about, in your book, about the importance of guarding the reputation of the parents so that you don't unduly gossip around the community and the family your contempt or contemptible things that the parent did, or things that they've done because they're not at their best self. They're physical things that are you know, offensive,
Mm-hmm.
or just relational things, or things that they. I had one relative that started using words in her very old age that we had never heard her say before. It can be shocking, and
Yes.
it can be an emotional release to make fun of them. But your book urges you to keep that um, restrained.
Yeah, some of the best feedback that I got on early drafts of the book were from people much younger than me who thought it was important to note that there are contexts where talking about your parents' failings can be important. With someone who's trained and licensed, that you tell them details that you wouldn't be telling your small group at church as a matter of prayer, because those people are not trained and licensed.
Yes.
They also can't give you the kind of help processing it that someone who's trained and licensed can. So if you're telling your small group at church about your parents' bad behavior, you're mostly just telling stories about your parents' bad behavior. You're not doing it because you need it. That
Mhm.
there are times when we're going to tell stories that our parents wouldn't want told, but it's only to people who can be trusted not to tell the stories further, and where it's part of a relationship where it's necessary.
Yeah, and one thing you can share, and I think was good for me at times, is take some time to share some good things, or at least good memories of your parents,
Yeah.
and honor them that way. They did, in most cases. There are good stories you can tell on them, and it can lift your spirits. Let me turn to one last fun subject. I guess it's
Mhm. Fun.
um, you talk in your book about the phenomenon of some care homes using um, like a robotic pet to
Mhm.
let someone with dementia, especially, hold in their lap to bring them comfort and companionship, and the possibilities that technology holds out to us for creating avatars of ourselves or the elderly parent to, you know, preserve or extrapolate interactions. The
Yeah.
grieving spouse can maybe talk with them through the miracles of modern technology. Are there
Mhm.
any ethical problems with that?
So, fairly obvious problems of deception. The these are these sorts of systems. The robotic pets have been in use for almost 25 years now, and the health outcomes, part of the reason they're used, and all of these technology assisted ways of providing something like companionship, but not with people. It's things that stand in for relationships with people. Now, a relationship with an actual pet is sort of hard to argue with because that's that has therapeutic benefit and there's no deception involved. That's a dog.
Mhm.
But when you give someone who's dealing with dementia, especially a progressive dementia, and you explain to them, okay, this is a robotic dog or harp seal, something that will express robotic affection. When you tell them in the first case, they might understand, and as their ability to make sense of the world diminishes, they might forget. And so, is that deception? That's a question. And if they don't currently have the ability to understand that this is a robot and not a pet, or this is a computer generated avatar, there isn't actually somebody on the other side of that audio device or even video device. There isn't somebody there. There's just a program. I think we have an obligation to, as an ethical matter, to make sure that a serious effort is made for them to agree to say, yes, that's what I want. I would like to have a conversation with a computer program that sounds like my dead spouse, or that sounds like my child who isn't on the phone right now. So a serious effort to make sure that at some point they were saying yes to that way of being engaged. That's why, I mean, my greatest desire for writing the book was that it would make it more likely that parents would talk with their children before these circumstances arise, that parents who are still in, good command of their faculties could sit down with their children, read a short story about something that's happening to a parent who no longer has complete command, and then they can say, this is what I would want to happen if I was in that circumstance. Here's how I'd like you to relate to me. Please don't give me a robot pet. Or, as I've told my children, so my instructions to my children are, if there's a way to give me companionship with an AI avatar, as long as you're also visiting me, I wouldn't mind. Suppose it works out in your life to visit me once a week, or for you to visit me once a month, but somebody from church to visit me once a week. And the rest of the time, I could talk to you through an avatar. Okay, that'd be all right. But I've told my children that'd be fine. I would like visits from people. I don't want this to replace. I don't want you to turn on the machine and then forget about me. But I don't mind if I get lonely and I can't get you on the phone, or there's no way for somebody to visit me right then.
I don't know the difference.
And especially if I don't know the difference, I'm okay with that. But it makes a big difference that my children have heard me say that. So if we have the conversation, I think the ethical problem becomes much smaller if people now, while they can, explain the principles they would like what values they want their children to follow when they can no longer explain themselves.
Absolutely. It's so important to have these conversations, even if they seem outlandish to you. We are going to get old if we're that lucky, and
Right.
we are going to die. And these conversations, while we're in our right mind, are tremendously important. So, Dr. Davis, thank you so much for helping us think through some of these very tough issues in such a compassionate and warm way. And your book, Honoring Our Dependent Parents, and your previous book, Departing in Peace, both are worth a read. And we thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
This episode was brought to you by the Herzog Foundation. The views and positions expressed don't necessarily represent those of the Herzog Foundation. Bye. Subscribe and review Conversation Balloons on your favorite podcast platform. Find me at leahfarish.com and on Instagram at LeahFarish.